husband sets up a camera after his wife keeps throwing away his mother's food, thinking she's just being rude. But when he visits his mother's house and sees something with his own eyes, his world is turned upside down. What he discovers will shock you. Was his wife right all along? Watch till the end to find out the chilling truth. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more jaw-dropping stories. Husband starts noticing that his mother's home-cooked meals keep disappearing from the fridge. At first, he thinks it's just a mistake. Maybe his wife prefers fresh food or doesn't like leftovers. But when it keeps happening night after night, he starts to feel uneasy. His mother's cooking is special, a taste of home, something he grew up with. It's not just food. It's a connection to his past. So why does his wife keep throwing it away? One evening after a long day at work, he opens the fridge and finds the container of his mother's famous beef stew missing. He knows it was there that morning. Frustrated, he turns to his wife, who barely looks up from her book. "Did you throw away mom's stew again?" His voice is calm, but there's an edge to it. She sighs, flips a page, and shrugs. "I told you before, I just don't think it's safe to eat old food." Something about her answer doesn't sit right. The stew was fresh. His mother had made it that very morning. And this isn't the first time it's happened. His mind starts racing. Why would she lie about something so small? What is she not telling him? That night he lies awake, staring at the ceiling. His wife is fast asleep beside him, breathing softly. But his thoughts won't stop. What if she's hiding something? What if it's not about the food at all? The next morning, before leaving for work, he makes a decision. He sets up a small camera in the kitchen, hidden just above the fridge. He feels ridiculous, like he's overreacting, but something in his gut tells him he needs to know. When he gets home that evening, he doesn't even take off his coat before rushing to check the footage. He fast forwards through hours of nothing until finally he sees his wife enter the kitchen. She opens the fridge, pulls out the container of food, and without even hesitating, walks straight to the trash can and dumps it. His stomach tightens. He knew it. But then she does something that makes his blood run cold. She wipes her hands on a paper towel, turns toward the hallway, and looks directly at the camera. A slow, knowing smile spreads across her lips before she flicks off the kitchen light. His heart pounds. She knew he was watching, and she didn't care. His breath caught in his throat. That smile, it wasn't embarrassed. It wasn't nervous. It was knowing, almost amused, like she wanted him to see. His hands felt clammy as he stared at the screen, watching her walk away like nothing happened. Why would she do that? Why throw away perfectly good food and then act like it was some kind of game? His mind raced with questions, but one thing was clear. This wasn't some innocent mistake. He turned off the footage and sat there for a long time, heart pounding. His wife was in the other room, probably reading or scrolling on her phone like nothing had happened. Should he confront her, demand an explanation? But something in his gut told him to wait, to be careful, because the way she looked at that camera, it didn't just give him chills, it scared him. The next morning, he kept things normal. He kissed her on the cheek, said goodbye, and left for work. But the whole day, he couldn't focus. His mother had always been kind to his wife, always went out of her way to make her feel welcome. So why this? Why throw away her food like it was poison? He needed to know more. That night, he decided to test her. Before going to bed, he grabbed one of his mother's homemade dishes from the fridge, a small container of chicken and rice. He scooped some onto a plate and sat at the kitchen table, eating slowly, watching for her reaction. She walked in, saw him eating, and for just a second, her expression changed. It was quick, barely a flicker, but he caught it. Her lips pressed together, her fingers tightened around the edge of the counter. Then, just as quickly, she forced a smile. "You're really into your mom's cooking, huh?" Something about the way she said it made his stomach twist. He nodded. "Yeah, why, you don't like it?" She gave a small laugh and shook her head. "It's fine. I just think fresh food is better, you know?" Then she turned and walked away before he could say anything else. That night, he set up the camera again. This time, he couldn't sleep. He kept waiting, listening for movement. Around 2 a.m., he finally heard it. The quiet creak of the bedroom door opening, the soft padding of feet down the hall. His heart pounded as he reached for his phone, pulling up the live feed. There she was, standing in the kitchen, staring at the fruit. But she wasn't just throwing the food away this time. She opened the container, leaned in, and sniffed it. Then she held it there for a long moment before whispering something under her breath. His blood turned ice cold. She wasn't just throwing it away. She was afraid of it. His fingers tightened around the phone as he watched her. Afraid of food? It didn't make sense. His mother's cooking was normal, delicious, made from scratch with love. What could possibly be in it that made his wife react like that? She stood there, still holding the container, her shoulders tense. Then, barely above a whisper, she said it again. His stomach clenched as he turned up the volume, heart pounding in his ears. It's not safe. The words sent a chill up his spine. Not safe? What was she talking about? He watched as she sealed the container back up, looking over her shoulder like she was scared someone was watching. Then, with careful, almost trembling hands, she walked it to the trash and placed it inside. Not fast, not careless. She lowered it like she was handling something dangerous. Then, before closing the lid, she whispered once more, "I'm sorry." His chest felt tight. His wife wasn't just throwing the food away. She was terrified of it. But why? He didn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the footage in his head over and over. He wanted to wake her up, demand answers, shake the truth out of her, but something held him back, that fear in her eyes. It wasn't fake. She wasn't being cruel, wasn't playing games. She truly believed something was wrong with his mother's food. The next morning, he waited until she left for work. Then, heart pounding, he grabbed the container from the trash. It was still sealed, untouched. He hesitated for only a second before opening it and taking a bite. It tasted normal, just like always. Warm spices, tender meat, the familiar comfort of home. Nothing strange, nothing wrong. So what was she so afraid of? That night, he didn't set up the camera. He wanted to hear it from her, face to face. As they sat down for dinner, he put his fork down and looked at her. "Tell me the truth. Why do you keep throwing away my mom's food?" She froze. For a long time, she didn't speak. She just stared at her plate. Then finally she whispered, "Because I know what's in it." His blood ran cold. His hands went stiff around his fork. The room suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. He swallowed hard, trying to keep his voice steady. "What do you mean? You know what's in it?" She didn't look at him. Her fingers tightened around the napkin in her lap, twisting it. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come out. He leaned forward, heart pounding. "Tell me." Her breath hitched, and finally she met his eyes. There was something raw there, something broken. "I didn't want to tell you. I didn't know how." The tension in his chest tightened like a vice. "Tell me what?" She let out a shaky breath and pushed her plate away. "I know because I've seen her do it." He stared at her, unblinking. Seen her do what? She swallowed hard, her hands trembling now. "I've seen your mom put things in the food." His skin went cold. "What things?" Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Powder, little drops of liquid, things that aren't supposed to be there." His stomach twisted violently. That didn't make sense. His mom wasn't. She wouldn't. This had to be a mistake. He shook his head. No way. My mom loves to cook. She'd never do something like that." His wife just stared at him, eyes glistening. "I'm not lying." He stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it in his ears. "You say my mom is poisoning us? That's insane." She flinched, but didn't back down. "I didn't want to believe it either. That's why I never said anything. But I've seen her, I swear. She waits until no one's looking, and then she slips something in. I don't know what it is, but I wasn't going to risk eating it or letting you eat it." His hands clenched into fists. His mind reeled, rejecting it. This was his mother, the woman who had raised him, taken care of him, cooked for him his entire life. She wouldn't do something like this. She couldn't. But then he remembered the camera footage, the way his wife whispered, "It's not safe." The way she placed the food in the trash like she was afraid to touch it. A horrible creeping feeling crawled up his spine. "I need to see it for myself," he said, his voice hollow. His wife's expression twisted with fear. "No, please, don't." But it was too late. His mind was already made up. That weekend, he was going to watch his mother cook and he was going to find out the truth. Saturday afternoon, he drove to his mother's house, his stomach twisting into knots. His wife begged him not to go, but he couldn't ignore it. He had to see it with his own eyes. He had to prove to himself that this was just a misunderstanding. His mother greeted him with a warm smile, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. Oh, what a nice surprise. I was just about to start dinner. He forced a smile, his heart hammering. Yeah, I thought I'd stop by, maybe help out. Her face lit up. That would be lovely. She moved around the kitchen with the ease of someone who had done this 1,000 times, humming softly as she pulled out ingredients. Everything looked normal, nothing suspicious, just flour, spices, fresh vegetables. He stayed close, watching every movement. She chopped onions, stirred a pot, measured out broth. Normal. Everything was normal. Then, as she turned to grab something from the counter, he saw it. A small glass bottle, barely the size of her palm, hidden near the stove. Her hand moved fast, fingers curling around it as she turned back to the pot. He held his breath as she tipped it ever so slightly, just a few drops of clear liquid into the simmering food. His chest locked up. It was real. His mother, his own mother, had just put something in the food, something she clearly didn't want anyone to see. She turned back, stirring like nothing had happened. Oh, this is going to be so delicious. You'll stay for dinner, won't you? His mouth went dry. He could barely think, barely breathe. What? What was that? She looked up, her brow furrowing. What was what, dear? He pointed at the pot, his fingers shaking. You just put something in there. I saw you. For a moment, she didn't move. Then slowly, she set the spoon down and sighed. Oh, honey, I was hoping you would notice. His blood turned to ice. What is it? She pressed her lips together, her expression unreadable. It's nothing bad, just something to help. A little insurance, you could say. His pulse roared in his ears. Insurance for what? She tilted her head, studying him like she was deciding how much to say. Then she sighed again. Marriage is hard, sweetheart. Sometimes people need a little encouragement to stay together. The words didn't make sense at first. Then all at once, they hit him like a freight train. His mother wasn't poisoning them. She was drugging them. His legs felt weak. He stumbled back, gripping the edge of the counter. You've been drugging us? She winced. Oh, don't say it like that. It's just a little something to keep things peaceful, to make sure you two stay happy together. You don't know what it's like watching your child's marriage fall apart. I only wanted to help. His stomach churned. He felt sick. His wife, she had known. She had been trying to protect them, and he hadn't believed her. His mother stepped forward, reaching for him. Sweetheart, please understand. I did this for you. He jerked away, his breath shallow. I need to go, she called after him. But he didn't stop. He grabbed his keys and bolted, his heart slamming against his ribs. He had to get home. He had to tell his wife she was right. And he had to make sure they never ate his mother's food again.